Hey, this is Patrick O'Reilly jumping in for a quick disclaimer in light of some recent events. We recorded this episode a little in advance to assure that our reviews would continue to post on schedule. As a result, I find myself in the uncomfortable position of needing to assure you, the listeners, that any baseless murder accusations leveled at the recently deceased were made entirely in jest. With that in mind, please enjoy our review of Saturn III.
We're on a mission from God.
Wendy?
So I got that going for me.
Darling?
Looks like I picked the wrong week to quit sniffing glue.
Light of my life.
We enjoy your films.
I am a human being. I thought they smelled bad on the outside.
Welcome to Vintage Video, where we'll be reviewing every major film release of the 1980s in real time. I'm Patrick O'Reilly.
I'm Jesse Bayless.
And I'm Richard Wells.
And today marks the 40th anniversary of the release of Saturn III on February 15th, 1980. It was written by Martin Amis from a story by John Barry and directed by Stanley Donen. It was released by Associated Film Distribution. And if you want to be technical, it was directed by John Barry for a few hours.
Yeah.
And then it was
he
directed by
left.
Stanley Donen.
And then he left, and then he died.
Yeah, he
I was
did.
like, what?
He left this
Yeah.
movie to go work on Empire Strikes Back and contracted meningitis and died on set.
Yeah.
Which, you know, then some DP that was just like his like assistant ended up being the DP for that whole movie. Mm-hmm. That's insane. The budget here was $10 million. It made $9 million. So that's $1 million in the hole.
But I really think that the budget comes through with the crazy amount of set.
Yeah, the
Like,
set
the set is enormous.
all the practical effects I think are phenomenal. I think all the opticals and the visual effects for space are terrible, which is crazy because in 68, 2001: A Space Odyssey looked incredible.
Well, and 2 years prior to the making of this film
Yeah,
is Star Wars.
right. And so they're clearly trying to like hype that up and get that angle covered.
I think it is important to note. I have like a whole little section prepared here.
Sure,
I'm gonna
go for it.
into a little filibuster here.
We're gonna pass this bill, regardless of how long you can talk.
Obviously, Star Wars changed a lot of things for science fiction and for filmmaking. Everyone wanted to get on the heels and get this sweet Star Wars money.
Right.
Now, I think had John Barry been able to properly direct this film, which it is said that he couldn't, like that he wasn't on set.
It was his first time directing.
Right. But they took it away from him, and other production problems, aside, I think that this movie would have come out in 79.
Right.
And other movies that came out in 79 are Alien, Star Trek the Motion Picture, and Disney's The Black Hole.
So it would have looked better than two of those three.
Yeah. Well, okay, hold on.
No, I know what you're going to
those are
say.
fighting words.
We've had disagreements
Yeah.
about Star Trek: The Motion Picture before.
is beautiful. It's but where I agree with you is that it's a different look of science fiction.
Yes,
Alien is a much more gritty science fiction, and that's why it
this
made it
is
stand out.
drama, mostly.
Saturn III is definitely more like The Black Hole,
Yeah.
as far as like campy science fiction.
Sure.
Where you're gonna have like robots and weird little legged landers and these crazy spaceships that don't make any sense at all.
Yeah.
What does physics have to do with
Yeah.
anything?
And Black Hole also deals with a crazy guy on a space station with an evil robot, which I think is funny.
That is funny.
So I think that the style of science fiction that they chose for this one was not the direction that they should have gone. Like, obviously, more should have
You
gone.
don't think it should have been like a psychological horror? You think it should have been...
I think it could have been a good psychological horror had it been edited together, and I'll get into the editing later on. But I think that the whole style and visuals tone was wrong.
Right. Okay.
I think that, and I think Star Trek would not have been the right visual tone either. That I think it needed to be more like Alien. It needed to be a little dirtier, and it needed to be a little more grit.
But the set is incredible.
The set is great. There's so many lights, and it's so big, and there's so many little things going on in details, and they run around it.
Yeah, the running around definitely felt 2001 inspired to me because they do a lot of the exercise in the loop
And I felt really bad for Farrah Fawcett.
Yeah.
She was running without a bra. And I wonder how many takes that she had to, like, she's on a full run. Like,
Yeah.
And it's just like, ooh, as I'm a man and I know that hurts.
Yeah, and it was funny when I first saw that John Barry was the director. I was like, wait, John Barry, like John Barry Orchestra John Barry?
Yeah.
But
Did
it's
the
not,
James Bond theme?
not him. Different guy. But it's also kind of depressing to think that if John Barry had gotten along better with Kirk Douglas, that he would have been, alive for longer.
Yeah.
Because meningitis is a very, like, simple, just contact causes death very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, literally, if he hadn't been working on Empire Strikes Back, he wouldn't have died.
Right.
Or at least not that way. So it's just a weird...
Are you implying that a Final Destination scenario would have occurred?
Well,
had
that's
he
what
not...
happens, Richard. You joke, but that's how the world works. Final Destination. Every time you
But
avoid
you're
death...
blaming Kirk Douglas for his death.
Kirk Douglas murdered him. And he's still around. I mean, we're recording this right now, but Kirk Douglas, the murderer, is still at large.
If you see him, please report.
He was 62 in this film.
62.
62.
62 in that movie.
And naked. Do you know how old Farrah Fawcett was?
63?
32.
Oh, that's right. She
32.
celebrated her birthday
She's
on set.
30 years younger than him. This is like, it's just another
Just
like
hot. I
classic
know.
Hollywood tradition of we could just put any young hot lady with any old dude.
Well,
care.
at least the point of this movie is supposed to be that he's too old for her.
Yeah.
I guess I don't even understand her backstory. Like they go into it.
She's never been to Earth.
She's never been to Earth, but like, where the hell did she come from? Because she wasn't born here. Because like at,
She's a
at
space baby.
at very first, I thought she was supposed to be his daughter on this space station, and then that
She's a little young
was
to be his daughter.
See, I thought
gross.
robot.
But it started getting really creepy, if that was the case.
I thought she was an android of some kind. And that's why she's just like so spacey.
Yeah.
But
I remember we wrote a scene in like the 7th or 8th grade that took place in the 1700s, and I had a joke in there where someone said, "Oh, that's his wife? She's old enough to be his sister." That's disgusting. But yeah, so yeah, Donen was already producing the film and filled the role that John Barry left. I think capably. I don't think the directing was the problem. I think the editing was a big part of the problem.
Yeah. And like I said, we need to get through a little bit more of the story
Sure.
before we can get into that.
And before we even get into that, Sean Connery was considered for the Adam character. Michael Caine was considered for the Harvey Keitel Benson character.
I think that could have been interesting.
Well, they're much closer in age, which is interesting. Keitel refused to dub over his voice for fixes in post because they didn't like his thick Brooklyn accent. So they brought in Roy Dotrice.
Oh my
To
god,
come and do the
that
voice.
makes me so happy.
Yeah.
I didn't know it was him till we looked it up afterwards, but that makes me so happy.
Which I mostly know Roy Dotrice through the Game of Thrones audiobooks.
I only know him through that. No,
Yeah.
it's not true. He has like 1,000,000 credits, and he's done a lot of things that you probably never heard of. But
I think he also holds like a Guinness record for doing the most
does.
different voices on an
does.
audiobook.
Yeah, for one of the Game of Thrones book, he did 224 voices, and that's the Guinness Book of World Records.
Oh my gosh.
But he's so great at these things because I was listening to the books.
That's in one book he does that, or over the course
That was
of the...
one. I think that was over one book. He did
Oh my
that
God,
many
that's
voices.
crazy.
Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it was over the course of the series, but I'm pretty sure it was a single book. But I was listening to the books in order, and he did the first one, the second one, and the third one, and then he wasn't available to record the fourth one.
That's right.
And I started listening to the fourth one, and I'm just like, I can't do this. I'm
who
done.
are all these
Apparently,
people?
I'm done with Game of
Who are
Thrones.
these
I can't,
strangers?
I love these books, but I can't listen to this other person read this book. And apparently, I'm not the only one because he went back in 2011 and re-recorded it. So it had been previously
Right.
recorded and released, and they re-recorded it and released his version of it, which thankfully I then found.
And they actually had him play a character on the show too. I
They
think
did,
at some point.
yeah. So you can get the complete Roy Dotrice series of Game of Thrones books.
Yeah. And if you'd like to hear him recite all of Harvey Keitel's dialogue for this movie, go check out Saturn 3. Screenwriter Martin Amis wrote a novel called Money, which appears to be a fictional account of the making of this film. And the protagonist, John Self, is playing the John Barry part. with Lorne Guyland filling the Kirk Douglas role. That sounds like a good old school Hollywood name / masculine character. It was nominated for 3 Razzies for actor and actress for Kirk and Farrah, and for Worst Picture.
This is our second Razzie nominated film of the year.
That's true. What was the first one? Caligula?
No, Cruisin'.
Cruisin' was?
Yeah.
Interesting, because you guys hated Caligula. Hector the Robot was 8 feet tall and cost $1 million, which was 1/10 of the budget of the film.
That's crazy.
And it took 20 people to operate.
It's crazy to me that they bothered with like an actual like robot puppet thing that looked as clunky as that is, because they literally could have fit a person in that suit and just had it right around. Like, you don't need 20 people. Like, put somebody in there, just have them walk around.
Well, I think for a lot of it was a guy in a suit, but yeah, for the parts where it wasn't, it's like that was unnecessary.
Yeah.
But they get every second out of it that they can.
Oh yeah.
Right as the movie starts, the first thing that struck me was the font that they used for the opening credits.
Yeah.
Which looks like the Indiana Jones font.
That's exactly what I was
Like,
thinking.
as soon as I saw the first name, I was like, that name should say Lawrence Kasdan. Why? But yeah, it's just the Indiana Jones font with the white outlines of black letters and
Right. And I thought that something was wrong with the audio.
because it's silent
It's
until
completely silent.
like the third or fourth shot of the movie.
And I get it. You know, I guess space is supposed to be quiet.
No one can hear you scream, from what I understand.
So I'm not sure that we watched the right version.
There's a wrong version.
Well, there was a cut where a bunch of stuff was removed.
A lot of stuff.
A
was
lot.
removed.
Well, yeah, from the list of things that were removed, it was a lot of content. And everything that they listed in that list of content, I don't remember from the film. So I think we watched an edited version.
Did we?
I whatever version this is. First of all, the quality of it was great.
Yeah, it was really nice transfer.
But yeah, it did not have any of the scenes that were described in that list. I think if we looked at the same list, we must have seen it. But yeah, I can only imagine that would have helped the story in some way.
I wonder if I can find that other version. We have Elmer Bernstein doing the soundtrack here. He's great.
But most of his soundtrack was removed.
Right, yeah.
But
there's a little bit like there's stuff that sounds like the theremin Ghostbuster-y stuff in places.
I loved the score.
Yeah.
I was super into it, that whole opening sequence with the
When they're
Spaceball
launching.
1
Yeah.
like type opening with the spaceship flying overhead and this crazy score going on. I was like, this is great. I love it. Although I was not thrilled with the weird satellite dish on the bottom of this spaceship.
Yeah, it honestly looked like they painted it and it like melted a
Yeah,
little
it was
bit.
like, ooh,
and they
that
were just
model's falling
like,
apart.
whatever, that's fine. We'll just say it's like part of the ship. And it's like, no, that looks like a wet paper plate. Take it off of the model. It looks like garbage. That needs to come off right away. I thought the same thing. I was like, it's not even symmetrical the way it's sagging.
It's like just all weird, warped.
Very weird. But we start with all these little pods are getting launched out. A bunch of people are getting their assignments, and they're calling all the captains to their ships to send them off to in various.
It was a really awkward, like, if that's how you launch every spaceship with, like, a parade of people, like, walking in, like, military lines to bring, like, your supplies to your ship and launch it. Like, just seems very theatrical to get a spaceship launched.
It was so awesome. Like, I was so excited because it's like to describe the scene, it's like it's like Patton giving his speech. So it's like this enormous image in the backdrop of the logo of this organization, which we never mentioned. But all these people kind of come up in silhouette and just stand up with like, it's like the.
It reminds me of Bugs Bunny at the Hollywood Bowl.
Yeah.
Like it's just like this very flat, like stage-like thing happening.
And I would have sworn it was like blue screen if there wasn't the reflection in the floor.
Yeah.
But when I was watching, I was just like, wow, that's actually like, what is that? Rear projected this whole wall of whatever this is.
Yeah, that's great. I was very confused to start with though, because I wasn't sure if this guy is actually Benson or not.
He's not. Captain Benson James is being called to his ship
Yeah.
And they're getting ready in the locker room to go on their assignments.
Yeah.
And Benson's like, oh, well, you know, I heard you failed all your tests.
Your mental
you're
exam.
a crazy person.
But why hide the identity of this person who we don't know who it is, only to have this reveal?
Well, Harvey Keitel was a known entity at the time, at least.
Yeah, but I didn't understand what they were going for. It's like they're really taking their time to hide the identity of this person, as if we've seen this person before and we're supposed to not know who it is, because there's no mystery, because the people who he reveals himself to don't know who he is either.
Yeah,
I was thinking this when we watched the movie, that it felt like this scene should have come at the end, where
that
you
would have been
revealed
better.
it.
Oh,
and it's the
editing
same as
problems.
Passengers.
Yeah.
It's the same as Passengers.
Oh my God, Passengers would have been a fabulous movie if they had reversed the freaking edit.
We were like halfway through the movie before I was like, oh, they edited this wrong. We shouldn't have known that Chris Pratt broke her out until the end of the movie, or at least like
Change
the
the
end
whole
of the
thing.
second act. They totally did this wrong.
It was such a good movie if they had just moved that scene.
Yeah. But
And gave Andy Garcia a line.
but this is
Nah, that's
before
okay.
Tarantino, so we do things in the order they happen. We don't want to confuse the audience. So he's basically
He's being berated by some
Benson
guy.
is ripping on this person. He's like, oh, I heard you're a total psychotic and you can't go to space because you're too crazy.
How'd you even get here?
Anyway, why are you dressed the same as me in this room with me? Anyway, I gotta go on my spaceship to my assignment because I'm not crazy, but you are. And Crazy Man sits down and like pulls the emergency lever, which just opens the ceiling of the locker room to the cold
space.
expanse of space. And when it sucks all the air out, it pulls the guy out too.
What is that lever for? What is it normally used for?
If someone farts or something in the locker room, you can suck it out real quick. But the part that confuses me more, there's so many things that confuse me about this. But he's not like buckled in or anything. He's just sitting in a chair in the corner of the room.
Bracing himself.
There's no reason he didn't get sucked out. And the guy who did get sucked out was bracing himself by holding onto a metal bar attached to a bench in the locker room. And it's like, why did one guy get sucked out and the other guy didn't? Also, why did he freeze instantly
and then
shatter.
get shattered?
and he hits a bunch of wires on his way out and he just explodes like he was frozen?
It was like something out of Cube.
Yeah, it did look like the beginning of
I
Cube.
was like, I was like 100% on board with this movie at this point. I was like, yes.
Very quickly gets on. It's like, no. This is a sci-fi movie with crazy murder in it. So get ready for that. But so Benson has now been killed by Vincent, who takes on the role of Benson and is Benson for the rest of the movie.
And they're heading to. I had to phrase my notes very specifically. They called it an experimental food colony. It's like, is it experimental food, or is it an experimental food colony?
I think it's the latter of those two. They're working on scaling up this photosynthesis process so they can create, like, what is it? Like plankton or something? Some kind of plant life that they're creating food. They're basically providing the food supply of Earth.
Right. And they're supposed to be trying to find ways to accelerate that process because people on Earth are starving.
Right.
So starving, in fact, that they are eating now small domesticated animals.
Right.
Dogs.
Yeah. And so this is basically just a giant hydroponics lab that's been mined into the inside of a comet. Why we're doing this in the middle of space, I'm not clear.
I loved the effect of them going through the ring of Saturn because it's like underwater.
Yeah. It looked
but
like
it's
just a bunch of rocks laid in like a reflective pool, and then they ran the camera really close to above them, and then they doubled that image.
Yeah, and the ship it was either sped up or stop motion. There's like a couple of instances in this movie where I can't tell if it's just really sped up image or if it's actual stop motion image, but it had this kind of jittery effect to it. But yeah, the way it was like moving between and just seeing all these like pebbles and things clunking off of it and stuff as it's flying through, I was like, that's a really neat, weird little effect. I don't know how they did that.
Again, reminiscent of the like warp scene in 2001: A Space Odyssey, where just like weird images are like flying at you and flying away from you at the same time, and But yeah, so we ride with Vincent, now Benson, to the.
You could have picked two more different names. That's
Yeah,
a little
that's true.
confusing.
Well, you want to blend in well. You want to be able to answer to Benson very quickly. So it's a good thing his name was Vincent, because I would turn every time I heard the word Benson if I was Vincent.
When you're one of 3 people,
Yeah,
it's like Benson. Oh, that's me.
I think he's talking to you. But yeah, so yeah, I even have the note here. Space station has a weird melty plate under it. But yeah, so they're in eclipse right now
Right.
as he's landing on the ship, which means that they lose all communication outside of this
Right.
specific
For
station.
for like 22 days.
Right. So they, Alex and Adam, played by Farrah Fawcett and Kirk Douglas respectively, lead him into the laboratory. And he takes off his helmet, so they don't know what Benson is supposed to look like. So this is Benson as far as they know. And he's carrying all these heavy tanks that are just a bunch of robot parts.
Yeah.
I feel like it's kind of weird because like they don't seem to have any knowledge of why he's there or anything. Like I feel like somebody would have told them, be like, "Hey, we're sending a dude up. He's gonna do this specific stuff, and that's gonna be good for you."
Yeah. But instead it's just kind of like, hey, I'm here with the stuff. And they're like, what is it? And he's like, don't look at it.
Don't touch it. No contact.
So yeah, he talks to them for a while in their room because they're clearly living together in their separate compartment of the lab. But then Adam tells Alex, because he's not intimidated at all by the presence of this new man, he's like, "Oh, take him to his room. Show him where he's going to be staying." And so she walks him to his room. And she says, "Can I get you anything to help you sleep?" And he says, "I'm probably just going to take a few blues and I'll..."
Blue Dreamers.
Yeah, he's got these pills called Blue Dreamers that help you sleep. But it's not clear if they're just sleeping pills or if they're actually like you get intoxicated in
Yeah.
some way.
They must be something else though. Like I mean,
Yeah.
the fact that they're called Blue Dreamers, like dreamers, like implies that there's
Yeah.
some hallucinogenic properties to these things,
something
and
like
the fact that like, you know, she's really into like wanting to try one of
Yeah.
these, and like the other dude's like, "Yeah, I've been there, done that. It's all right."
I was trying to draw some biblical parables to this, where it's like, obviously his name is Adam.
Yeah.
Like that's like the big one.
Right.
And here is a woman who we don't know where she came from, as in.
So she came from his rib, is what you're suggesting?
Well, what I'm suggesting is the what they were trying to do, and now here's this other person
She's
who's
tempting him.
yeah, trying to convince him to, here, you try it. We should try this. We should do this. That would obviously,
The Blue Dreamers are the apples.
yeah, that would eventually bring down paradise.
Right, but it had nothing to do with bringing down paradise.
And in the Bible there was a robot.
Right, the 8-foot-tall
Everyone
robot
always
Hector.
forgets about that. The
Well,
robot.
Hector is like from Troy, right?
yeah.
Yeah. Which was just like, he was like a big warrior or something. He was like the strongest.
Something like that.
Is there more to the
I'm not
Hector
up on my
story?
Greek
Well,
mythology.
yeah, I mean, Paris made out with Helen of Troy and took her away.
Yeah.
And Agamemnon was pissed, but was looking for an
Agamemnon
excuse.
was Sean Connery, right?
He was actually in Time Bandits. So they got the army, and obviously Achilles was leading the ground forces. I'll keep going. Achilles' cousin was killed. He got pissed, and so he challenged Hector. He kills Hector and like drags Hector's body around for a while.
I'm impressed at your Greek mythology knowledge. Where did that come from?
Grease.
Yeah.
He watches that movie on loop.
Constantly. John Travolta was great.
But yeah, so he offers her some of the Blue Dreamers, and she's like, "No, it's cool. I'm good." And then she goes back and she's like, "Hey, have you ever heard of Blue Dreamers? Are they cool? I want some Blue Dreamers." Can we get some
Like
Blue
he
Dreamers?
tucked one in her pocket. Like he's a creepy little drug pusher.
Yeah.
Well, he's got no, I want to say no diplomacy, but he's got no like courtesy. Like he's just very upfront. I say what I mean. I do what I.
Yeah, he's on the spectrum somewhere, I think.
Definitely. I mean, he's psychotic. Definitely psychotic.
Sure. In the middle of the night, they hear the dog barking, because there's a dog on this ship. And lately, in these movies from the 80s, the dogs fare very well. And so the dog, it turns out, is locked in the lab again, which is a common occurrence, that the automatic doors, because dogs don't have souls, the doors won't open to allow a dog to...
There are 2 people. Well, now there's 3 people and a dog on this ship. You think the lady could keep track of it.
Yeah. But she doesn't. We don't know where our dog is. There's only 3 people
Our
here.
dog is standing outside that door making a little jingly sound right
she?
now. Yeah, you didn't hear that?
No, I haven't. I got my headphones on. But yeah. So the dog was locked in the lab again. Alex, in helping the dog escape, goes to check in the capsule that Benson left and tries to open it, and immediately he's there on top of her, like, no contact, and closes the thing up again. But he scares the dog away when he tells her no contact, and so she's like following the dog around. What's the dog's name? Like Sally.
Sally. Yeah.
And she's like, Sally, come here, Sally. And he's like, oh, the dog has a name? And she's like, yeah. You never had a dog before? And he's like, yeah, we just call them food. We just call it lunch. Because that's what Earth is devolved into.
And yet she's desperate to go there.
Yeah.
It's like I don't understand her. Like all they do is make Earth seem like it's a horrible place. People are starving.
Well, maybe she's always wondered what her dog tastes like.
I can't eat this one. It's the only one I got.
Yeah, it's unethical for
I
me
feel
to
like
eat
she
this
gets
dog.
a little bit of an opportunity later to find
This is
out
what-
and doesn't partake.
Yeah, that's true. She does pass on an opportunity to eat this dog. But yeah, so Benson starts building Hector, and he shows them that this tube that he wasn't letting them touch is literally full of like genetically
brains.
engineered brains.
Brain matter.
Yeah. But it's like the size of like 5 brains lumped into one big clump. And but it's empty. It's like freshly formatted brain. And he's like, oh, so this is like a fully functional brain? He's like, no, this is totally useless. I have to program it. But he uses direct interfacing.
Like, how do you do that? And he's like, points to the creepy little,
Neo
hole. Yeah.
He's got a big, a little jack in the back of his neck, and he literally plugs a wire directly from the robot into this hole in the back of his neck, so that it can understand what he's, the instructions that he's giving it, and then it sort of has an algorithm where it can extrapolate from there to kind of program itself a little bit.
He spends a lot of time building this robot.
Yeah.
It's almost like a montage of him building it, and Adam and Alex kind of having weird little conversations.
They're kind of just going about their business while they're doing it, but yeah, they have little conversations.
There's a scene where he's throwing the globe. Well, first of all, they try the Blue Dreamers.
My note was Alex and Adam split the Blue Dreamer for no reason. There's no effect shown other than like they just have a long conversation afterward, and I guess we're supposed to assume like, oh, they loosened up and had a conversation, but it's like they've been talking this whole time.
But I was trying to get a good freeze frame on the layout of the globe that they're throwing back and forth.
Oh, okay.
To see like if there's any any crazy
discrepancies.
It's got a lot of weird little like on the continents. It's got like a lot of weird little colored things that are attached to it, but it looks more like indications of information and not necessarily like a piece of the land has shifted or something like that.
Nothing's underwater that didn't.
Yeah, it didn't look that way.
Was there a New Zealand? It's very important. There's a whole subreddit devoted to maps without New Zealand. Like people just leave it off of the map for some reason.
Or did you see the one recently where in Russia where they called it Japan?
No.
They had Australia and then New Zealand was labeled Japan.
Just right off the coast of Australia. Everybody knows that.
So when Hector's up and running, he is definitely not the robot that I expected him to be.
Yeah, I thought my computer at work took a long time to start up.
Yeah.
This thing, like, you have to sit and watch every tube fill with fluid. Like, it has a whole cardiovascular system.
Yeah, but then, like, the head is just this tiny little thing.
It looks like Johnny Five's face or something.
Well, if you knocked the top of Wally's head off, like, that's what it looks like.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird because, like, I'm like, oh, okay, well, you have this weird little, like, Pixar lamp on top of a robot because you have a man inside the rest of the robot and you're trying to make it not look like a man because this thing is, like, hulking and huge. And I'm like, so you have a dude in there walking around and then you have, like, this really skinny little, like, mechanical head on top to try to cover that up. But No, apparently the whole thing was just some sort of robot that took 20 people to animate.
Yeah. He takes the finished robot into Alex and Adam's room to show them, like, oh, look, I finished the robot. Mm-hmm. But when they first get into the room, there's like a sound being played by their speakers, which is just like a really annoying, like high-pitch grinding sound.
Yeah.
And when he walks in, he says, like, oh, you're blinding him or you're blocking him. You need to turn that sound off. And so then they turn the sound off, and he walks the robot in, and he's like, oh, yeah, tell him to do anything. He could literally do anything. And they're like, pick up that flask. And it just bends the flask in half and hands it to him. He's like, oh, I'm glad I didn't ask you for a handshake. And it's like, this never pays off later that
it's clearly
this
foreshadowing,
specific sound that this thing makes will stop the robot in its tracks.
Yeah. Also, that the robot does not like being made fun of.
Right.
Like the robot kind of like has like an audio cue that it's like frustrated or angry.
Which is clearly something that it learned from Vincent Benson.
Yeah.
So we see a little bit of Adam playing chess. Mm-hmm. And he's playing against the robot for a while, and then Benson plugs into the robot and kind of controls him to help him learn how to play the game properly.
Well, and like I said, like this is one of those instances where I can't tell if it's stop motion or just they just sped up the film.
It kind of looked like stop motion to me in this one. It was really kind of jerky. I don't know why
when it's actually moving the pieces.
I don't know why you would bother with filming some mechanical puppet and then speeding up the film. Like it seems a little.
Well, I guess because if they couldn't make it move fast enough.
Yeah, I guess
because it is literally just guys trying to grab hold of things.
Yeah.
But yeah, it had this weird kind of
jerky
motion to it, and I hate chessboards where you can't tell what the pieces are.
It was very clear.
But future chess is all about confusing pieces.
Yeah, because the game gets boring after a while, and then you have to mix it up by making the pieces look interchangeable. They should all look like pawns, and you just have to remember where they started.
Yeah,
that's like the genius
ultimate
person chess. Yeah. Or like there's not even pieces on the board. You just have to remember how it started.
Damn, I lost.
But yeah, so while they're working in the lab, there's a laser cutting a rock in half or something
I guess.
that. And
it's very important for food production. You wouldn't understand.
Of course I wouldn't. And they're standing very near it, and it explodes. Presumably they hit like a hot like a pocket of water or moisture inside, and it got hot and exploded, and it blasts a tiny sliver of rock into Alex's eye, and then like Benson freaks out and starts grabbing her head, and he's like, oh, Hector will get it out, and she's like, oh god, no.
I saw what that thing did to a flask.
It's like tried to pick up a can yesterday and bent it in half.
It's actually a really tense scene. I was just like, ooh, I don't.
She's like, just get Adam can do with this.
Yeah. She's like really upset, and it keeps like zooming in on the eye, like you're at an optometrist, and it's like flipping around the different lenses.
It's like 10 times magnification,
and it's just like getting this little claw close. It's not even like a fine tuned claw, like a pair of tweezers. It's this is his normal.
I wish it had just been like a big like Lego hand, like like the Lost in Space robot, just like and just pinched,
smushed your eye,
and her head just explodes.
I don't understand if did Benson intentionally cause this accident to happen, because it feels like he wants to prove his robot's capabilities, but I don't know how he could have caused this to happen.
I don't know that he could have. I also think that he's very hard to read throughout the whole film, so it's hard to determine what he did on purpose and what happened by happenstance.
Well, I think we'll get to more of what he does a little bit later, but I had a terrible problem with him throughout the film of I have no idea what his motivation is.
Yeah.
I don't understand why
unless he knew she was there and he was trying to get to her.
Right, so he starts to become really obsessed with her.
Yeah.
And
so does Hector because of the direct
Right, but did he know, why did he go there in the first place? Why did he kill this guy and take his place and go there? Is he just...
Because the guy makes it sound like Saturn 3 is a shit detail anyway. When they're in the locker room at the beginning, he's like, well, I probably would have pretended I was crazy too if I knew I was going to go to Saturn 3. It's freaking garbage planet.
I think, to me, what happened was he got angry and he killed this guy. And we can kind of get that impression later on in the movie where he reacts.
You don't think his
violently.
intention was to replace him the whole time?
No, I think that he got frustrated and killed him. Although he's going
wearing
into a
the suit,
locker.
yeah.
He's going into his suit.
I think he was there with the express purpose. Like, he obviously entered this workforce with the intention of doing this job and was upset that he didn't get the job.
So this is just his reaction to having been told, no,
You're
can't,
not good enough.
You
And he's
can't
like,
do this, so
I'm
no,
not good
I'll find a
enough,
way
you're
to
not
do
good
this.
enough.
I'm going to go anyways.
Yeah.
So that was his sole motivation. So once he gets there, he doesn't have any ill will towards the people there. Like, what's his motivation after he gets there?
I guess just to do his job because
Yeah,
he's crazy.
when he gets there, his motivation is to do his job, but then his motivation becomes, oh, I'm going to
Get
this
this
girl
girl?
because she's more attractive than I expected. And
Yeah, it's really confusing throughout. Like, it doesn't seem really obvious what he wants.
I would love to see, like, the results of whatever test he took back on, like, at the space station, where they're just like, oh, what did your computer program? And he's like, well, this is it's a dog sculpture. It's like, it doesn't look like a dog. No, it was sculpted out of a dog. It started as a dog.
It's like the employment test at Blockbuster.
Yeah, exactly.
Hold on, we're gonna have the conversation that Benson has with the robot.
Right.
They're a one-on-one, which
He's
is
like-
weird because he's just talking to himself.
Yeah, it was frustrating me already that he's trying to talk to the robot and the robot's responding through text on the screen. I was like, wait, what year is this? And the robots can't talk? Like, robots could talk when this movie came out.
But
Yeah.
he made the point.
But yeah, that immediately happened to answer my concern. But I was just like already frustrated. And then even Keitel's like, why aren't you talking? Stop texting me and talk. This is dangerous. You're taking your eyes off the road.
I don't know if this was the standard computer noise from back in the day.
Yeah.
But the sound of the text appearing on the screen in this movie is the same sound of text appearing on the screen in Alien.
Oh, interesting.
And I don't, maybe that was just sounds computer made.
Or
in the
maybe they
day.
took it directly from that production.
Yeah, I'm not sure. But because I know a lot of the sound effects in Alien, like they're burned into my mind because I've seen that movie so many times.
Yeah.
And so I thought it was a strange coincidence, but I don't know anything about computers from the 70s.
Yeah.
I think that his Hector's response, like, it was a little confusing to me when he's like, I'm not ready yet. Like, he's not ready to start talking. I'm
Yeah,
like,
because Hector's being very Hal-ish.
yeah, so I wasn't quite sure if that meant that, like, oh, you need to, like, download more of your brain into me, or like, I'm biding my time until I have something worth saying.
Yeah, I think it's a little of column A and a little of column B. But he also, at this point, is texting messages like, oh, by the way, you're a murderer. And he's like, what? No, blank that, please.
It's like, but he knows everything you know.
He's like, okay, I'm going to blank that, okay? But you did kill a guy. And he's like, I said blank that,
Oh, whoops,
please.
sorry.
Oh, sorry, my bad.
Sorry, Mr. Killer.
Sorry, dude. Don't kill me.
And he says, I'm not malfunctioning, you are.
Right, which is essentially the whole like premise of 2001: A Space Odyssey, which is that Hal makes the point that whenever there has been an error in the HAL 9000 series, it has always come down to human error. Like, it's not me, it's you guys that screwed up.
It can only be attributable to human error. This sort of thing has cropped up before, and it has always been due to human error.
And it turns out the reason is because the people who programmed it built in this like subsystem that caused a problem.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what's happening here, is that while he's programming it, he's also infecting it with his psychotic brain disease, and he's turning it into a murder bot that is obsessed with Farrah Fawcett's character, who in the entire movie is wearing almost nothing but pajamas, or nothing.
Yeah.
It's either pajamas or no clothes. But yeah, so he keeps telling it to forget that he killed anybody. And then the robot kills Sally.
Yeah.
The dog is back in the lab, and they hear the sounds of it being wounded, and Alex runs in to try and find the dog, and then finds its mangled corpse on the floor. Probably because it inherited the idea that dogs are for killing and eating from the robot.
Plus,
Or
the only
from
thing,
Benson.
other than extracting pieces of rock from people's eyes, The only thing that these hands seem to be able to do is crush things.
Right.
And because it even breaks one of the chess pieces when it loses.
Yeah.
And it's just
Which it loses because it can't see far enough ahead to understand a sacrifice play in a game of chess. Which
foreshadowing.
Yeah.
Unlike the last foreshadowing. The sound. That didn't pay off.
Right. Did Hal ever play chess with them?
Yes.
That's a pretty common thing, I guess, with the AIs.
Computers that play chess.
I feel like that far in the future, no one's going to play chess with a robot because it's just like
not even
why?
in the thing when he dumps the.
That's in the present, though, isn't it? Relatively.
In Tron, but I guess that's supposed to be in the present too.
Yeah, it just feels like it's just RNG situation. You're just like, oh, did I set you for exactly my skill level? Because otherwise you're going to beat me, and if you're any less, then I'll beat you, and that's the end of the conversation. There's literally no way you're going to beat a robot at chess.
Easy there, Deep Blue.
Yeah. But yeah, so the dog is dead.
My dog is dead.
Hector is terrified by Alex running up to him. She's just screaming about the dog having been killed, and he grabs her by the wrists and lifts her off the ground.
Yeah.
This seems like it would be incredibly painful. I don't like both in if that was reality and on set. Like she's dangling from his little metal arms by her wrists.
And Benson is trying to tell Hector to put her down, but he's not listening to Benson, and he says, you have to tell him because the robot's in love with her and he'll do anything she says. So she says, Hector, put me down. And then he puts her down, and she had blood on her hands, and I don't know if it was from the robot picking her up or from the dog corpse.
I think it was supposed to be from the
Sally juice.
No, from the robot, like just squeezing her.
Oh, okay.
That's how I read it, but yeah.
I don't remember how close she got to the dog's remains there, but she runs back to her room with Adam to tell him what happened, and then basically Benson is like hot on her heels and is like, hey, guess what? We're leaving now. We're going to go to Earth. Yeah. And because I guess he kind of has gathered that she is interested in Earth because she keeps asking him questions about it. Mm-hmm. And so he's kind of like, come with me. We're going to go to Earth. And Adam's like, yeah, no, that's not going to happen right now.
So do you think at this point that Benson realizes that the robot is crazy?
Well,
Benson knows, I think.
Yeah.
I don't think Adam knows yet.
Because they seal it in the lab and it starts clawing its way through the doors.
It starts disassembling the door to get back. But yeah. Right now, I think he knows that Adam knows that Benson is crazy. But
no, I want to know if Benson thinks the robot's crazy. So he's like, I'm going to take the girl and get out of here because this robot's crazy.
I do think that's part of it. Is he's like, yeah, they were right. I shouldn't have come up here, and I'm going to take you, and we're going to leave now. He was just like, I'm not waiting for the eclipse to be over. We're going to get on a ship right now, and we're going to leave because I can't fix this robot. So he tries to leave with Alex, and then he gets in a fight with naked Kirk Douglas.
Well, that's coming up.
Oh, okay.
So they overload Hector when he goes to charge up.
Right, that's right.
And then he tells Benson to dismantle Hector, which he does. But then there's this crazy reverse footage of Hector reassembling.
Putting himself back together, yeah.
Yeah, it took me... I had to watch it... I watched it twice just to verify that it's definitely
just playing in reverse.
In reverse. Yeah. But it's pretty clever the way they do it. I guess whatever part of Benson is still functioning, Benson Hector, well, that'll become blurred later, that he's communicating with their older robots to have the older robots reassemble him. Yeah. It's at this point that's when Benson barges in and says, I'm taking Alex.
Right. Yeah.
And just...
so at this point, they don't even know that Hector is back together yet.
Correct.
And he tries to leave.
I was really confused when they said disassemble him, and he disassembled, and Benson disassembled Hector. So, like, Benson's intentions were good at this point.
Yeah.
Like they weren't.
Well,
they weren't
semi-good, yeah.
I mean, yeah, I guess
He
he
still
wanted
wanted to steal the girl away.
But like he didn't. He never intended for this robot to do anybody any harm.
Correct. I think that's true. He was just trying to do his job. But Adam is resistant, and the two of them start fighting, and they get each other in chokeholds back and forth.
Yeah.
Kirk Douglas is a 62-year-old naked man.
Fully naked and straddling Harvey Keitel.
Yeah. He gets bashed over the head real hard with his tank.
Yeah.
And is he knocked unconscious?
I don't know if he's completely
He's at
unconscious,
least
but
dazed.
he's down for a bit.
But while that's going on, Benson is able to get his hands on Alex and drag her down the hallway,
And then-
where they run headlong into Hector, the freshly reassembled Hector, and
Then he gets his hands on Harvey Keitel.
yeah, and murders him.
Well, we don't.
We
Well, so Alex assumes that Benson is murdered here.
right.
We all assume that he's murdered
Yeah,
here.
his hand gets severed.
Right.
Correct.
And then Adam and Alex start crawling through some tunnels for some reason.
Yeah, and then just robot arms are like punching through the floor
Yeah.
and trying to grab at them like they're in a crappy haunted house.
Yeah, this seems to be a trend, I think, in films of this time, too, that, you know, like, all spaceships are made of, like, crawl spaces with grates over top of them. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is taken
It's
from, like,
definitely-
actual ships or something like that. Because
Or
it just,
specifically Alien.
Or just
Yeah.
all from Alien.
Well, and they keep turning their back on Hector, and he goes, Where'd he go? It's like, well, why don't you just keep watching
Yeah.
him?
Keep an eye on him, guys. The ground above you, you can see through it. That's the whole point of it.
They try to lay a trap for him
In the lab.
in the lab with, I guess
There's
it's-
like a tank of nitro.
Well,
liquid
but before
nitrogen.
that,
Yeah,
they're
liquid
they're in like the control center of the ship, and they're like they try to lock the doors, but you know, like we already know that he can get through the doors,
Right.
And then he comes over like Benson comes over the intercom system,
Right.
or at least what they thought was Benson. Because they hear his voice, they're like, oh, like we thought he was dead, and like he's on this video screen, and he's clearly not dead. And then we cut to like the mutilated face of
There's
Benson
just been like
Yeah.
wrapped
sitting
around.
on top of Hector's little tiny robot head.
He Hannibal Lectered his face on.
Yeah, and so I don't know if the implication was that perhaps in this time Hector did a full download of Benson.
Yeah, I think they are combined now.
Yeah, which is super crazy because that's the exact same thing that happens in Black Hole.
Oh, is it?
The
He downloads himself to the robot.
well, no, the compression of the black hole merges the bad guy and the crazy robot into one consonant being, and they reign over hell.
Yeah. Interesting.
It's such a crazy ending to that movie. I love it.
But I think that this scene is now establishing that this robot can basically do any voice that
Right,
he's
yes.
heard. Like he could just mimic Benson, even though Benson's now dead.
Yeah, he's a deep fake robot.
Yeah, because he turns away. Well, I guess it was not turning away because it was just coming by to check in.
Yeah, after the eclipse is over, they're getting a check-in from a ship that's like, hey, is everything okay down there? We're just checking in since you're coming out of eclipse. And using Farrah Fawcett and Kirk Douglas's voice, the robot is like, oh, yeah, everything's fine here. We had a little bit of trouble, but we're all good now.
How are you?
How are you? Boring conversation anyway.
But then they go and go to try to set the trap
Right.
for Hector by basically pulling up the floor panels, taking out the metal grating, which is like the structure underneath it, and like laying the sheet metal or whatever is on top of it back over it, so like
So that
clearly
he'll
he would fall
fall
through.
through
Right.
But for some reason, it's there's just water under the lab.
It's
liquid nitrogen because
Oh,
they
is it
wanted to
liquid
freeze
nitrogen?
him and break him,
Oh.
but I don't know why they have a pool of liquid nitrogen. Under the floor.
because they got him into it before. He's already fallen into it once.
Right,
and-
but when
and
he
came
fell in
out
before,
all
he
frozen.
just yeah. Did they get him in it before?
Yeah. So because they lay this trap once before, and he throws a rock through it to prove that it's a trap.
I thought that was this time.
Yeah, that's this time.
No, there's a time they do it twice, which is what's frustrating.
Right. We're just at the first time here. So this is the time at which he comes and he's chasing them, and she's standing there as bait.
Right.
And he comes up and starts to like.
They put a platform over it, and he starts to walk forward, but he notices it, and he's like, "This is a trap." And he picks up a rock and throws it at it and breaks the thing, and then Adam turns on one of the other robots and knocks him into it.
Right.
And that's the first time he falls.
Right,
in.
and then they run around some more.
Right.
Yeah. So then he comes out and he's covered in ice because he got so cold from the liquid nitrogen. But he's still able to move and chases them around. But then they're like knocked unconscious. Like first they go up, they try to escape while he's frozen. Mm-hmm. But when they get to the surface, the ship explodes.
Yeah,
which got like a genuine reaction from you.
Oh yeah, I wasn't expecting that at all.
Because they're right when they get to the surface, they're running up to the ship and it explodes on the surface, and they're like, "Well, I guess we'll go back inside." And they go to bed. They sleep, and they wake up in separate chambers, and the robot is talking to them and telling them, "Come this way, come to the lab. You're going to come fix everything that you broke now." And
threatens them, like, "I'm going to cut off your air.
Yeah.
You're going to get hungry.
This whole ship is going to kill you if you don't do what I say."
This whole ship's a bunch of buttons.
Yeah.
And that's when
You're
Adam...
nothing but a damned radio with doors.
That's when Adam realizes that he also now has the same port in the back of his neck.
Right.
That Benson did.
That the plan is now that he's going to do what he did to Benson, which is suck all of Benson's knowledge out and kill him, and then put his face over Benson's face.
and that Alex will love him.
Yeah. It really would have been a happy ending if they didn't interrupt it. But on his way to the lab, Adam stops by the grenade department. And he gets a grenade or some kind of explosive device. And when they get into the lab, he basically tackles Hector into the tank while setting the grenade on.
Well, I like how he kind of goads him into like getting frustrated again. Though it's like, "By the way, Captain, I'm a major, and we are going to get back to work, but I'm still in charge here."
Right. Which is a reference to the fact that Farrah Fawcett is, for the first time in her career, not being credited as Farrah Fawcett Majors.
Yeah.
She just got away from a major, and now she's stuck with another major. Yeah. And so he jump tackles him into this tank, and they both explode and die.
Yeah, and are frozen for preservation.
Right.
And then I guess she just leaves?
She's like, "I guess I will go to Earth." It sounded kind of nice.
And then it ends with like she's on a shuttle going to Earth, and
with
it's
this really ominous music.
Yeah, it's like, wait, is she going to die? Is she going to kill people?
And she's also headed towards like a black and gray planet Earth.
Yeah, it's like, this doesn't seem like an ending that I want for her.
Yeah.
Man, totally forgot to mention my favorite part of this movie.
What's that?
If what I think I saw is actually what I saw.
Oh yeah.
The robot erection was the best part of this movie.
Yeah, they're showing like the connection that Benson has to the robot.
Yeah, so basically, Benson walks into the room when we're first kind of introducing Hector, and Hector is shown mimicking all of Benson's motion. So like he raises his hand and the robot's hand goes up.
He taps his fingers.
And he taps his fingers, the robot taps his fingers, and then, or whatever, his claws.
Yeah.
And then they're both looking at Alex, and we don't see anything happen to Benson, but then they cut to like this close-up of like a robotic arm thing just like raising up slowly into the air.
Yeah.
So you just kind of are led to assume that he was mimicking Benson there.
Yeah. I wanted to play this clip of Farrah Fawcett on The Tonight Show in 1987 where Carson is taking some cheap shots at this movie.
Okay.
Then you did a couple of movies that were not the greatest successes in the world. Did you really have a point there where you said, "Oh, wow, you did Saturn 3, I remember." Was that it?
That's a good one.
And, well, and it didn't really work for you for a while.
No, an interesting story. The title of that, before we finished, before I started, was The Helper.
The Helper.
And it was very interesting.
Terrible
it was
title.
about a man-manufactured robot who fell in love because he felt the emotions of the man who had made him. And it was very interesting, the script, before we started.
And then all of a sudden...
I don't know what happened.
No, lately you did the burning bed.
Honestly, I think what we got is better than what she describes as the first draft of the movie. But the title, The Helper, is just... That's a dumb title. But I thought it was funny that he's so harsh that he's just like, you did a bunch of terrible movies after you left that show that you're famous for.
Yeah, that's pretty rough.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that's the whole movie, right?
Yeah, I think what Jesse was talking about earlier was, it was when it was aired on television, they reincorporated a bunch of scenes.
They put stuff back in.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I won't read the whole list, but there's a massive list of stuff going on outside the space station.
Oh, interesting.
Wait, so you're saying that I'm sorry, maybe I misread it. So you're saying that they actually added stuff back in when they put it on television?
Correct.
So we did watch a theatrical release.
I think so, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there's stuff.
It's a nice transfer to not be the full version of the movie, I think.
They discuss how Hector got put back together. They discuss, I guess they show more of the mutilation of Benson's body.
Okay.
And so all this stuff was put back in for a TV release,
which is weird. That you have the actual more mutilation and gore for the TV version.
Yeah. There's something about Benson sabotages the airlock system to keep Adam outside. Blowing out airlocks and stuff. There's a whole bunch more action pieces.
Yeah, there's a lot of weird editing too. The scene where he's talking to the robot about that he's a killer, and he's like, "Oh, blank that." Mm-hmm. But there's what seems like a day or two later, suddenly we have the same camera angle from him talking to the robot, of him talking to Farrah Fawcett or something else, and it's just that was clearly a part of that previous scene, but somehow it ended up here.
Yeah. Well, and you gotta remember, this movie occurs over the course of 20-some days.
Yeah, it takes 3 weeks to unfold.
Well, I think that they probably had a lot of problems because they, lost a director after they started shooting.
Right. That's true.
So I think that they were kind of trying to make the best of a bad situation, whatever they had.
Yeah.
I think what would have helped move the story along is, as far as instead of trying to make it seem like they've been there for weeks, instead of having this planetoid, I won't say moon because they don't really.
Well, it's like an asteroid, right?
Yeah, because it's not a moon of Saturn, because they would just call it one of the names of the moons.
Yeah. And if it was Saturn 3, it was the third biggest moon. They would call it whatever the third biggest moon is.
Instead of having it be eclipsed by Saturn, they should have just have it rotate around to the dark side, and then that could have been just a couple of days versus 20-some days, which seems just way too long.
Yeah, we missed a lot of their character arcs if this is 22 days.
And like Jesse was saying, is what's going on here? What is Benson trying to accomplish in all this time, other than just building and fine-tuning this robot? It would have been interesting, had it become his Jack Torrance obsession.
Yeah.
Fine-tuning this robot. I'm going to make this robot perfect because I'm not perfect. So this robot has to be perfect.
But there can only be one
Benson.
Shining / 2001 A Space Odyssey parody film, and that is Passengers. So we've already covered it.
Well, honestly, I was thinking that this movie has some bones to it that could be good if it was remade. I mean, I think that there's some interesting ideas there about,
So much of it is beat for beat 2001 A Space Odyssey.
Yeah, I mean, I like the idea. I mean, I like the idea of this robot learning to sort of be psychotic and be a killer from a man, and and the idea that it develops feelings as such.
What was that Russell Crowe movie? Is it Virtuosity?
Virtuosity with Denzel Washington?
Where it's kind of a similar thing where they mix all the worst serial killers together into a virtual reality person.
And it comes to life?
Yeah, it gets out of the system.
I was reading some things from the Wikipedia here, and apparently the production pre-sold the movie for $4 million to NBC.
Right, that's where most of their money came from.
Maybe that's why they had to put a bunch of shots back there. And I'm like, shoot, we sold a movie for
Yeah.
a lot more money than it's probably worth.
Which is like, yeah, that's like the ultimate scam.
Yeah.
I have to say, too, that I'm pretty sure that Michael Douglas is a clone. Because how do you inherit a voice?
Yeah, it is interesting.
It's not possible, genetics, to inherit the exact same voice of your father. If you closed your eyes and listened to Kirk Douglas talk, it is Michael Douglas's voice. I just could not get over it. It was really bothersome to me. I was just like, I can't believe how much they sound alike.
That's funny. It's crazy too to think that Michael Douglas is older now than Kirk Douglas was in that movie.
Yeah.
And yet Kirk Douglas is still around.
Still alive.
I mean, he might not be by the time this episode posts, but presently he's still around. He's like 102, and he's a murderer. And because of him being a murderer, the director of this film is Stanley Donen, who is probably best known for his work directing Charade or Singing in the Rain. Mm-hmm. The writer was Martin Amis. This is his only screenplay. Everything else that he has writing credits for were based on novels, or he just got a story credit. He didn't actually write the screenplay.
Yeah, because I see him as a writer for London Fields, which is incredible.
It just came out, right? Recently, like last couple of years?
Yeah, within the last year. I mean, it was held for a long, long time.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah, because Amber Heard, they wanted her to do more nudity.
Oh,
and
she heard that?
And she didn't want to do it, so they got body doubles and just intercut.
For all the nudity?
Yeah, they just intercut it with her, and apparently
that's
like some kind of contract violation about doubling.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you have to talk to me about that, and they didn't.
Mm-hmm.
And they're trying to pass it off as her, so she tried to hold up the production. And like all kinds of people were like trying to sue, but I guess it all got settled, and it finally got released to terrible reviews. But
you just have the double replace her in the rest of the movie.
Then you don't need Amber Heard.
Then you're done. But the other writer, credited writer, is John Barry, who, like we said, did mostly production design. He worked on Clockwork Orange, Superman's 1 and 2, Star Wars 4 and 5, and then passed away of viral meningitis on the set of...
But oddly enough, did not do the production design on this movie.
Right.
Stuart Craig did the production design on this movie, and he's still working today. He did all the Harry Potter movies. He did, looking at the Mission, Memphis Belle, Chaplin, Mary
What
Riley.
Is The Mission? Is that the one?
It's a Roland Joffe with Robert De Niro.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, this is his first, the production designer's first credit as a production designer.
He was probably like John Barry's assistant and got stepped up for this movie.
It must be, because the sets for this, again, I can't stress
amazing.
enough how great this film looks.
It's like Bond level stuff, the work that they did.
Well, I think one of the things that happened was their budget got cut way back. So
once they had already started? Or?
Yeah, once they had started. So they were in production, and another film that this company was producing, that ITC was producing, was Raise the Titanic, did really poorly.
Yeah.
And then they cut the budget back. So I imagine that they had built these beautiful sets and then had to, scale everything back. Scale back the movie as best they could with whatever
we'll
cuts
cover
they got.
Raise the Titanic later too. I have that one, so it's coming later in 1980. Farrah Fawcett played Alex here. You obviously know her from Charlie's Angels or Logan's Run.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, Raise the Titanic. I'm sorry, it didn't do poorly. It went over budget.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And Farrah Fawcett is also in Cannonball Run next year. For us, not for you guys. Sorry. Kirk Douglas was Adam, still alive somehow, elderly Ant-Man's dad. I know him mostly. The first thing I always go to is 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
Same here.
But Spartacus is probably a very close second.
Yeah.
I think this is the first movie I've seen him in. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, my opinion of him is not very high currently.
Yeah. You haven't seen It Runs in the Family?
No.
Nobody did. It was Kirk Douglas, Michael Douglas, and Michael Douglas's son, who I think has since dropped out of acting.
Yeah, I think so. But I know Spartacus is the more famous, obviously, of the movies that the 20,000 Leagues between
Sure.
the two. But 20,000 Leagues, I think, just because like Disney was so prominent in our childhood, like because VHS had come out,
and I like the songs that he sings in. Movie too.
So many great people in that movie.
I need to rewatch it. It's been too long. Harvey Keitel as Benson, obviously probably best known for his Tarantino roles, but he's been in a lot of Scorsese stuff too, and the original Bad Lieutenant. But for Tarantino, he was the Wolf, and he was Mr. White, and then
I love that he wanted to just be the pimp in
Taxi Driver. Yeah,
like he actually asked to play that role. Like originally he was supposed to be, I think, a black man, and he was like, wait, no, I really want this.
I want to be this guy. That's cool. Okay, so up or down? What do you think, Jess?
Don't bother.
This is an up from me. I definitely recommend at least watching this movie.
I think I'm gonna go up also on this one.
Really?
Yeah, I think it's worth it just for the killer robot. That's enough for me. I'm a simple man. I have simple needs. One of those needs is a killer robot.
And one of those needs is a robot erection.
Everybody could use one. Letterboxd.
So I put this one after Midnight Madness, but just ahead of what was the Killer Santa movie? To All a Good Night.
Ahead of To All a Good Night. Okay.
So I guess this is going to take up my number 4 spot.
Whoa!
Wow. So, you were excited about this one.
So it should be My Brilliant Career, and then Mad Max, The Fog, and then Saturn 3.
Wow, okay. That's pretty high.
I'd rather watch Saturn 3 again than... Again, how I'm doing this is like, would I rather watch this again? And I'd rather watch Saturn 3 than American Gigolo.
Yeah, okay.
I think it's also... for me, slotting into the number 4 spot. Our lists look very different, but or no, I guess 5, the 5th slot. I'm gonna put this just below Caligula, but above Midnight Madness. So, my top 5 right now are Mad Max, The Fog, My Brilliant Career, Caligula, and this.
Fascinating. You guys have a much higher opinion of this movie than I did.
It's just fun. It's fun and it's crazy. I think that's everything for this one. If you guys have any thoughts you'd like to share, we are Vintage Video Pod on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and Letterboxd. Or as I've said before, you can find each of our full movie rankings for the year. Check us out at vintagevideopodcast.com. Please consider rating us on iTunes to help new people find the show. And if you take the time to leave us a review, we will thank you personally in an upcoming episode. If you're feeling especially generous, you can also support the show through patreon.com/vintagevideopodcast. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you'll join us next time when we will be discussing Don't Answer the Phone, which IMDb describes as a deeply disturbed Vietnam veteran terrorizes the young women of Los Angeles and taunts a radio psychologist with descriptions of his grisly crimes. I would say that is inaccurate.
Yeah.
We leave you now with the trailer for Don't Answer the Phone.
Run if you must.
Hello, operator. It's an emergency. Can you help me?
Hide if you can. Scream if you are able.
Who's there?
But above all, if you are alone, don't answer the phone. He is out there, somewhere in the crowd, behind you, beside you, ready to kill again.
No attempt to conceal the body. It's almost like you wanted it to be discovered.
The nurse, the starlet, the student, the secretary.
I am frightened of you. What does that do to you?
All men. I kill and rape them all. No one can stop me.
You recognize this person?
Because I'm too strong.
You are alone. Don't answer the phone. Rated R.